Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, so we
Hi,
should be
everybody.
live. I'm just wanting to.
Yep. It says it's live on here. Let me. That should
Yeah.
be-
Yeah. Okay. So we are live.
It says it's live on here.
Okay. Yeah. So, what's up, everybody? This is the mathpig after party. I'm going to leave a link in the description to that stream, and then, well, I mean, like, I can only assume that most people who have who saw mathpig stream is now here. But just in case you didn't, I'm going to leave it there, and then you can go watch that and then watch this because it's probably going to make more sense. Anyway, so we have Mr. Parker, we have Vincere, we have Leophilius, and we have Jefferson all back. They were all over on mathpig side. So yeah, I mean, I loved mathpig stream. I thought it was really, really good. I thought it was very interesting and very entertaining.
I do want to apologize to anybody here, especially Vincere, because I might have been a little bit overbearing.
No.
I tend to get that way. I have Asperger's, so sometimes I get really passionate. So, Steven, Mr. Parker, Vince, Jefferson, if I get that way, just say, hey, Leo, let's bring it down a notch.
What's funny is I have Asperger's as well.
Oh, awesome. Virtual fist bump.
and I appreciate your passion. So you're not going to offend me.
Okay. I hope I don't. That's all I can say. I hate offending people. I really do.
I might offend everyone here. So, I apologize in advance. Even Steven, I might even offend him.
I mean, that'd be kind of impressive because it's very hard to offend me. But you know, sure, if you think
Steve, the entire stream.
For me, the only way you can offend me is if you make terrible statements against Emilia Clarke. Like that is not a weak point, but if you say anything about her that's negative, I'm going to jump. I will hop on you like white on rice, a glass of milk, and a paper plate in a snowstorm.
I think she's too short and her line delivery is questionable.
Well, she is short as fuck, and I love it. So fuck you, man. I love being able to have people like Jeff fuck with me and have some playful banter back and forth. It's fun.
I just think your problem is you just post too many pictures.
Nope, I don't post enough pictures.
I think you post enough pictures. It's just enough.
Yeah, it's right at the line,
Yeah.
I'm assuming Vince knows who Emilia Clarke is. It just in the case that you don't, if you've watched Game of Thrones, she portrays Daenerys Targaryen in that television adaptation. Okay, yeah, so awesome. That's my future wife.
She looks better with her natural hair color that she does.
Oh, absolutely. She looks better without any makeup on either.
The weird blonde thing that they got doing for that for the show. It's just like
Well, I mean, as her character, and this is the thing I'm weird about this. Like when I look at Daniel Radcliffe, I do not see Harry Potter. When I look at Harry Potter, I do not see Daniel Radcliffe. If I look at Johnny Depp, I don't see Jack Sparrow. If I look at Jack Sparrow, I don't see Johnny Depp. When I look at Emilia Clarke, I don't see Daenerys Targaryen. If I look at Daenerys Targaryen, I don't see Emilia Clarke. I separate the character from the person who portrays them. It's just a weird thing that I do. So the blonde hair when she's in character doesn't bother me at all. But like when she had her hair dyed with blonde highlights, I was just like, I mean, woman, you're attractive regardless of what you do because your character is so, I mean, she's just based as fuck. I mean, she just is. But I was like, your hair, because her natural hair color brings out her natural beauty to me. That's just how I look at that. So,
but you're an obsessed super fan, so I would expect you to say. Okay.
I'm going to say this in the private chat because I'm not saying this out loud.
Oh, I would. Oh, Mr. Parker said Leo sounds like a bottom. I would. I'm not. I can't. Okay. I normally don't make these kind of statements. I don't. But this one time I will. I would let her top the fuck out of me. I'm sorry. If she sees this stream, baby, I'm sorry. But yes,
5 minutes in.
Mr. Parker, I was going to say.
Like, oh, this has already gone to shit. What did I do?
What you've done with that comment is invited like a 14-minute commentary on how much he would like to be that bottom. So yeah,
listening to this for 20 minutes now.
We're just gonna, and I mean,
said anything.
I can't. I mean, Emilia Clarke is an attractive woman. So
Stefan's looking her up a bit or something. He's doing something.
So anyway,
Steven looks perplexed and concerned.
I want to ask Steven. Oh, go ahead, Steven. I'm sorry.
All of you guys just kind of froze for about 20 seconds there. So
was that on the stream or for you?
That I don't know.
Let
I
me
don't think
see.
it was
So far,
stream.
just for me. So far, just for me. But
Oh no, it did happen on the stream too.
it happen.
Well,
Well, that is
that'll be fun to watch. That's no problem.
Yeah,
Oh, you're
yeah,
halfway
sure.
through the
Just me,
sentence.
just perplexed, just like what the
was
fuck
just-
is going on?
It was just several geeks like rhetorically ejaculating over Amelia Clark. It was no big deal.
I was not rhetorically ejaculating. So
I think if it's more than 3, technically speaking, that would be a bukkake.
You might be right.
oh my lord. I just because it popped into mind, I do have a question for Steven. I don't want to ask. It's not an inappropriate question, but
I think I established a certain goal, a line in the sand.
are you and Jen dating? Are you guys together?
No.
Would
We
you
were,
just-
but no.
Okay, so did you guys just kind of have a little bit of a fling there, or that's the word I'm going to use?
Sort of, yeah. Like I said it at the start of mathpig channel. I don't harbor any ill feelings towards Jen, like at all. We just weren't compatible in that way. But for any of you who are familiar with well, I mean, some of you might. I think Leo, you will definitely know who I'm referring to when I say this.
Probably.
But Icky Taint is still under the impression that me and Jen are dating,
And that should be maintained.
Yes.
That should be maintained.
He emails me on an almost weekly basis with like a review of a video that she has done where he just straight up just insults her personally.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry, but Icky Taint
Seriously.
definitely
Yeah,
had.
oh yeah, yeah.
Probably still has a thing for her. I think. I mean, anybody who knows and Steven does because he's literally pursuing a degree in it. That knows anything about psychology would be able to look at that and be like, yeah, this dude needs. Yeah.
I'm genuinely surprised by that because I when I first heard about Smokey saying, and actually my brother was like, hey, take a listen to this guy and then let me know what you think. After about 5 or 10 minutes of listening to him. And then I'd listen to him and then I'd call him back and I'd be like, okay, I got some thoughts about this guy. I'm a little bit concerned about his mental health. And my brother was like, exactly. What Steven just described there with the emails, that's above and beyond what I thought. I didn't suspect that. That's interesting. And dark.
Smokey.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's obviously that, but like, yeah.
Smokey has an inferiority complex. I mean, he just does. It's way too blatant. And the thing is, I feel sorry for this man. I would love to sit down with him in person and honestly, because I know this man has problems. He's keeping them bottled up. He's not talking about them. He's not working through them. And it all comes out on YouTube. And I don't think he realizes this. Almost every video he does is a response to somebody else. It's filled with him spewing vitriol about them, about their worldview, and character attacks. There's nothing substantive to anything that he says. He's not a stupid. I don't think the Smokey is a stupid person. I really don't. I really don't.
He's not. He's nowhere near as well read as he'd like to think he is, or the way he plays himself off.
Yeah.
And on top of that, like a lot of the stuff that he's doing, I think, if you've got somebody whose Christianity is predicated on a pretty well enunciated need to see bad people punished, not just in the afterlife, but in the here and now. As far as I'm concerned, you have somebody who's very insecure about not only their faith, but about a lot of other stuff. I don't want to read into how much all that other stuff could be, but definitely about their own faith. I was a Christian, was for a long time.
I was Catholic Christian, yep.
Yeah,
devout.
Sorry, I have to show this.
I did also have a question for you, Steven, and feel free to say no. And this is just really, really quick, and then I want Jeff to get back to what he was saying. Would you mind if I threw a link to Tioga to this stream privately, since we have one other slot?
Yeah, well, yeah, sure.
Okay. So, Tioga, I'm going to give you a link. You don't have to come in. It'll be on Twitter. Like I said, you don't have to come in, but you are free if you want to.
Okay, so
I like Tioga's avatar photo. She's kind of got a Bjork thing going on. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I really want to say something, but I don't want to sound like mean or rude when I say it. Tioga's an attractive woman.
Especially in the Bjork.
Like based on what little I have seen. Yeah, sure. I do just want to. Okay, so some of us need some context. Okay, so I first came into contact with Smokey when I was on Modern Day Debate for the first time. It was myself and Michael
Versus
against
him and Maddox, I believe it was, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so we went 3 rounds. It was terrible. Not
Maddox
because
was
I don't think that me and Michael did like a good as job as we could have done considering who we were partnered against. But like I think that they're both kind of cut from the same cloth and that they kind of act the same way in a way because they both don't answer questions, never. And they, when they get frustrated about you demolishing their arguments, they insult you personally. And so it's like nothing productive can kind of happen from engaging with them. And I kind of got a sense for that on the second debate. It was I believe I might be recounting this wrong, but it was I believe Michael's idea to have a round 3. Which I kind of agree to, and on the kind of after good thing comes.
Sorry to interrupt, but your first debate was on morality, I believe, and then the second one was on does God. Oh, was it? So did it go? Does God exist? Does the Christian God exist? Morality?
Yes. So the like only like tiny minute change. The first one was does a God exist?
Yeah.
And then it was, does the Christian God exist? Because we kept saying, well, okay, does a God, well, which God? Because we have to know which one we're talking about. And they wouldn't do that, yeah. So that kind of led almost naturally into the round 2. But morality was kind of brought up in smaller parts over the first 2 rounds. And so then we just kind of decided to make it like a standalone one for the third one. But so yeah, so that's my only kind of introduction of Smokey. I had no idea who the fuck he was beforehand. Smokey has said to me in email that he has a planned live stream coming up. He doesn't know when that is going to be, where he's just talking about me, and he's probably going to insult Jen in there as well as
definitely.
Wow.
So yeah, like
wow.
I'll look just in case anybody thinks that I'm like exaggerating or anything. I'm just going to where the fuck is that? Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So where are we? Are you able to see that?
I see the word hoe.
You can tell that
I've got screenshots
where
too.
I'm going from.
slag. Okay, there's a lot of insults. Idiot,
Holy
slag,
crap.
bitch, skunt.
Yeah, where I'm kind of okay.
Holy
so
shit.
I'll just kind of say it. He said the world doesn't need any more whores or retards, and now I have a special video in your honor coming up just for you being you, Rib. So yeah, that's the bit that I was trying to show. I know I probably did that badly, and I could have just brought it up in a separate tab and then shown it. Anyway, yeah. So Smokey, for some reason, doesn't really like me, and there's other emails.
You dated his future wife. That's why.
I mean, probably. I know that as soon, and I mean the microsecond that Jen showed up in her bra, he was instantly aroused and has not come down since. And that's why it's kind of, that's why he's so kind of built up about this. But I don't know, man. I think it's funny in a way because, like, I know that I'm living rent free in his head, and I don't think about him from one week to the next, and I just find that amusing. Just the imbalance there. I don't know.
I think
It's amusing to me.
I think if you ask Jen though, I think she resents the fact that she's living rent free in his head. Like that's actually the worst part because like he's like putting lipstick on his face in front of the mirror like this, and singing songs in her honor.
She's living rent free in a different area, not the head.
Well, did anybody? And I know Rib was there. I don't know if Jeff or Parker were, but the stream when she came in and said she's fucking you, Did anybody notice the immediate change of tone in Smokey's voice?
I didn't know that this happened. That happened?
Oh, yeah. She
Yeah.
straight up, she said, I'm just going to lay it out. I'm fucking Rib. And
I
Smokey,
salute her.
the tone
That
in
is
Smokey's voice
bold.
went from like, wanting to target all these people and everything to just like almost complete devastation. And I'm just like, it was, whoo, boy, that was fucking funny. I about pissed myself laughing.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's as good as what stupid horror energy did to the Praise I Am stream. Just brilliant. Like, man,
Yeah.
that's genius.
Oh,
I mean, I did that on, I did that too, but yeah, no.
Mhm.
Showing up topless for me is just gross. It's gross.
There was something what the fuck was I gonna say? Oh yeah, Smokey. Oh, he loves to throw vitriol at everybody else, but hates it when him and the people he associates with get it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
It's strange. He likes to say people. He likes to say people use emotional, like they're getting emotional about things, even
says
though like
Feelings noise a lot.
Yeah, he says his feelings a lot. He's like, he says all these feeling words. I would describe them as the R word, the B word, and all these other clearly negative words about women and other people's mental capacity. And I'm like, you say you're not, you're a cold-hearted person. I'm like, yeah, you're a cold-hearted, emotional person. That's for sure.
He seems to have a problem with
kind of broader context of that stream. So Smokey did like an open mic type of a thing, and I showed up in the comments, and this is when I was still seeing Jen, and I had kind of said, like, I had popped up, and he had said, oh, that like we had like a good interaction, and I was just like, yeah, we had one. And he was like, like, what do you mean by that? Like, he immediately picked up on it. And so I was just like, look, I mean, like, kind of bring me in, like, and we'll talk about it. And I had posted like several more like comments, and I was like, I was like, well, I mean, like, when you insult somebody who I'm friends with, I mean, like, that I'm going to be a little bit pissed off at that, like when you personally insult them, when you call them all of these things. And the one thing that Smokey did not, and clearly still does not understand about what my implication for doing that, this is not sarcasm, by the way. This, like, I was saying that he is using words like slut and like whore and like all of these things in a clearly negative context. And I went in there with kind of saying, well, there's nothing wrong with being a slut or a whore because women are allowed to like sex just as much as men are. I don't have to be a fucking feminist in order to say it. Like, no, like if guys are allowed to like sex, then so are women. That's just kind of basic. So I kind of went in there with kind of going like, Smokey, like, can you kind of tell me where you're coming from? Because I clearly don't understand. So if you could just kind of explain to me how being a slut is bad, then we'll kind of have a we'll kind of talk about it. And so it was clearly going nowhere. And then Jen came in, and I had said that like me and Jen weren't friends. And kind of left it like as kind of open as that, because me and Jenna kind of agreed that she was gonna like announce. And so so when she came in then, and she was just like, yeah, I'm fucking Rib. And as Leo said then, Smokey's entire demeanor, entire everything just completely changed. Yeah, like, he would have 100% got like completely jealous. Like,
is that video still available?
I'm pretty sure. I can't remember what the name of the after show was, but there was something about Smokey I wanted to say. Nakatsuchi the Rage was having a stream a couple days ago. He was talking with Nicholas Whitmire, and Smokey Saint showed up and made a comment about how I don't understand logic and I don't know logic. And I'm going to put this in the private chat. I asked Smokey, I said, okay, so maybe you can tell me what this phrase means. And that's what it is. I'm going to put it in the YouTube side chat as well, so that people know what I'm talking about. That's what the phrase that I put in. I said, so Smokey, can you disseminate what that phrase is, what it means, what it's telling us? He didn't answer, and this tried to just pretty much went on a vitriolic tirade about how I don't understand anything. So what that phrase says is, for all functions of a variable, there exists a variable of that function which implies the function, which is obviously true. It's first order logic. It's predicate logic. If you have a function of a variable, then the variable of that function implies the function naturally. I mean, we all understand that. Pretty basic. But he wanted to claim that I don't understand logic, but I do. And then he said, well, you're just using fancy math words. And I'm just like, are you stating that mathematical notation isn't ubiquitous in logic? Because if you're stating that, you're wrong. Because propositional logic, this was predicate logic, but things like propositional logic is often called propositional calculus.
So is fancy math words, is that like the equivalent to feeling noise?
Yeah.
But when he does that, I brought this up, and I don't know if he ever addressed it or not, but I brought it up several times, and a couple of times I've talked about him. One of the things that I think is actually kind of disgusting about him is that he will argue about the idea that he cannot tolerate this, the fact that his opponents are trafficking in this disgusting feeling noises, blah, blah, blah. But then you listen to him criticize people, and the word that he uses the most is disgusting. And it's like, you are trafficking in nothing but emotion. Your emotion just happens to be your own anger and disgust and repulsion at all these things around you. And then you everything that I gather that you're talking about is a reaction to that feeling. So I'm not exactly sure at any point that anything that I've ever heard from Smokey has been anything other than, by his standard, feelings noise. It's just him pissed off that these disgusting lower thans are deigned to speak to him.
Yep.
How dare you?
That's exactly what it is. I mean, it really is. He's, like I said, he's just overly vitriolic, and it stems in the way that he speaks, and the people that he speaks to in that way demonstrates his inferiority complex.
And he's doing it to other Christians now. I heard him actually ripping on this one guy, and there were a couple other Christians that he doesn't think are real Christians. Obviously, they're disgusting clown trash garbage people. All the same verbiage comes out. It's like everybody at this point is your enemy.
SFB mod. I'd love to have a discussion with SFB mod, because he talks a lot about quantum mechanics but doesn't know what he's talking about. The guy told me that you don't really need to normalize a wave function. That's just fancy mathematical stuff that you don't use outside of school, which is completely wrong. He's essentially stating that the Born rule of quantum mechanics just isn't true. Which
You might as well be talking about Sudanese cuisine. I have no idea, no frame of reference as to what you're talking about.
The Born rule essentially states that we can derive any particular outcome from the normalization, what's called the normalization condition of the wave function squared.
Still no clue.
So the normalization condition. So no, because I can make this really simple. The normalization condition of the wave function essentially takes all of the probabilities that you have and it makes them equal to 1. Like, for instance, if you flip a coin, the outcome of it being heads and tails, in the sense of heads or tails, like put together, is 1. Obviously, it's 50% chance it could be heads, 50% chance it could be tails, for a 100% chance of heads or tails. So it's equal to the probability of when you take all the probabilities and add them up, it should always equal 1, right? Okay. So that's called normalizing a wave function. It's setting it up. It involves fancy integral calculus to ensure that all of your probabilities add up to 1. Because if they don't, obviously you have problems. If you flip a coin and you do some math and you state that, well, the probability of it being heads or tails is 1.67, you did something wrong, because it should be 1. So that's the normalization condition of the wave function. If you square that, take it to the power of 2, square it, that gives you the outcome that you're measuring. It collapses the wave function, so to speak.
Okay. I just wanted to point out the comment that you highlighted, Stephen, from Tioga. That's exactly right. I really do get the impression from Smokey that he's sort of stepping on people on his way up to grander things.
Oh
in his mind.
Yeah,
in his mind, definitely.
Yeah, I sort of think that like Smokey is trying to turn into Darth Dawkins. That's just my own personal kind of thing. The fact that like Darth kind of goes after other Christians as well, and all that sort of thing. I mean, like, not that Darth himself is a Christian, of course, he's a Zion, but like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I
But
get
Darth, I've been watching some of Tom Rabbit's videos. Darth seems to be running, wearing out his welcome, even in some of the Discord haunts he's been on. So,
Oh,
Oh,
for
for
sure,
sure.
man. He's been banned from like 3 servers in the last like 2 months.
yeah, people are getting tired of his shit. Yeah, he's just a
Yeah.
crazy old boomer with an axe to grind against anybody that disagrees with him, and his theology is fucking whack.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I can get him on my channel at some point. I know I have Rick. Does anybody here know who Rick Delano is?
I've heard
No.
the name, yeah.
Yeah, he's the guy that tries to argue that cosmology and quantum mechanics doesn't go far enough, and we got to rethink it, and that they can show that like the solar system or the Earth is at the center of the whole universe, and oh man, he thinks that the luminiferous aether, which was disproved by I shouldn't use the word disproved. We were incapable of verifying it based on the things that should 100% absolutely be true if it was there in the Michelson-Morley experiments, and he argues that somehow they did show that there is a luminiferous aether and there isn't. And the luminiferous aether was proposed because we found out that light is a wave, and we know that water waves need a medium to travel through, i.e. water. Sound waves or acoustic waves need a medium to travel through, i.e. some form of matter that can be moved. So if light is a wave, then it requires some sort of medium to travel through, and that's what the luminiferous aether was, or the Lorentz aether was. It was the medium that light traveled through. But we ended up finding out that light doesn't actually need a medium to travel through. It's a wave for the same reason that all particles are waves. So yeah.
Well, that would be fun.
Oh no! It'll be a really fun time.
It'll be a hoot.
Yeah.
For those that can follow along. I did follow along with your explanation there. But
Yeah.
Physical sciences, unfortunately, are not my bag, baby. And I'm all about like crazy politics and frightening religions.
Oh my God, Jerry Penna. The thing is, Jerry, Inspiring Philosophy or Michael Jones is somebody that I want to talk, because him, Praise I Am That I Am, and John Maddox, Logical, Plausible, Probable, otherwise known as LPP, they all state that consciousness causes collapse of the wave function. That is known as the consciousness causes collapse, or the CCC interpretation of quantum mechanics, more formally known as the von Neumann-Wigner interpretation. And von Neumann and then Eugene Wigner both abandoned that interpretation in favor of the Copenhagen interpretation. We know that consciousness plays no role in the collapse of the wave function. Anybody understanding the linear algebra behind wave function collapse should know that. I asked Praise, I said, do you know what wave function collapse means? I said, but before I get there, because it's not like super mathematically rigorous, but I needed to ask him, and I did. Do you know what a function of a variable is, f of x? He said no. But this is a guy who claims he knows more about quantum mechanics than I do.
I was going to say, I've heard Praise talk about that exact same thing. He's brought it up in debates, and I've heard I can't remember if it's Raw Matt or if it's that guy named Mitchell, which Mitchell I think is a terrible word because it just reminds me of, there's this horrible movie with Joe Don Baker called Mitch. Never mind, it's a long story. It's terrible, but Mitchell reminds me of that, and I think he used to use it too. So Raw Matt Mitchell or somebody else. There was another guy. It was kind of obnoxious. And they would talk about this thing as if it was some kind of established fact, that CCC thing that we were talking about. And I'm like, this sounds like, it sounds like Crazy Town kind of stuff.
Yeah. And another thing the IPP or IP says is that, well, matter is just a vector on a Hilbert space. And I bet if I asked Michael Jones, who runs the Inspiring Philosophy channel, what a Hilbert space is, he probably couldn't give me a definition of it. For those who are wondering, a Hilbert space, put simplistically, is the space of all possible wave functions. It is a complex vector space, meaning that it's a vector space, meaning any point you map on that space is mapped as a vector. It has magnitude and direction. So imagine a line, the length of the line being the magnitude, an arrow at the end of the line implying the direction in which the line is moving. Two quantities or arguments defined by a vector, the magnitude and the direction. Any point you map on a vector space is a vector. A complex vector space is a vector defined by a complex number, or a number with both a real and an imaginary, like an imaginary part, like a plus bi, where a could be 3 and bi could be 4 I representing the imaginary unit. It can be infinite dimensional, and we often map in terms of like wave functions and things like that. We use what's called a Hermitian operator, which is just a mathematical operator that is its own adjoint, and an adjoint generalizes conjugate transposes of a matrix. If anybody knows what that is, I'm not going to go into explaining it. So if you don't ask. It's just a fuck pile of matrix theory and vector theory and linear algebra. But these people the point that I'm getting at is that these people that are making these claims have no fucking clue what they're talking about. They just don't. And it gets frustrating because it's like, you literally don't know what you're talking. I know what Jerry's talking about. Science side up. She is fucking brilliant. How are you going to comment on something without actually knowing what it is that you're commenting on?
It's bad too if they start talking about it, because if somebody like me who's a complete layman and my understanding of physics comes from Back to the Future movies and the Matrix trilogy, I'm listening to things that they're saying, and it's like, okay, not only is this not intuitive, it doesn't sound like it's correct, and ultimately it's not convincing. And I'm pretty sure that these people are trying to convince me that Jesus is real and loves me at the end of the day.
Yep.
What the hell is this stuff about? Like this quantum? They might as well have picked up a copy of The Secret and are trying to tell me that positive thoughts influence the universe. At that point, they might as well be trying to argue something like that, because they're completely way off base at this point. They're just trying to hijack something about an esoteric, what seems to them to be an esoteric form of science. It's not easy for the masses to comprehend. They hijack it, use that to bulldoze people rhetorically, and then are like, "Hey, prove me wrong." Like,
you summarized that so goddamn perfectly. I don't know what that was, just beautiful, because that's exactly what they do. It's that they know that the average atheist isn't going to know this stuff. And so if I just string a bunch of big sounding words together in a sentence and throw it at them and say, well, how am I wrong? The person that I'm up against, the atheist, isn't going to know what the fuck to do.
Yeah, their opponent is left with, hey, you want to talk about some books we read? They automatically sound like they've been intellectually diminished just by virtue of admitting, like, I really don't understand what you're talking about. Now, given the way rhetoric works, they should be applauded for admitting, like, look, everything that you told me about, I don't have a grounds for that. I really don't understand what you're talking about. Yeah. And since we don't have a common level of understanding about that, we need to change the topic. That's the honest thing to do.
Exactly.
And that's usually when they're, beta soy cuck, flake, whatever, words and stuff pop out.
I'm wondering, I'm not
when they do that, that's when I get excited, because once they start doing that, that's when the fizz starts coming out of their ears and nose, and I'm like, oh yeah, they've lost it, here we go.
I'm wondering if Praise has seen, and he probably has watched some of IP's videos, because IP is essentially arguing that you need a consciousness to create matter, and that space-time is emergent from a Hilbert space. No, that's not what the holographic principle says. It says that space-time is an emergent property from its information encoded on a lower dimensional boundary, like a two-dimensional light-like gravitational boundary or something along those lines. It's often used in reference to the ADS-CFT correspondence developed by Juan Maldacena in like 96 or 97. But even then, the holographic principle has not been verified to any degree.
To answer Soy Swine, yes, your name consists of two words that make me excite. To quote Borat.
I am very excited.
Very excited. Yeah,
I think that I can do the Borat voice, but is that is it racist?
No.
Against Kazakhstanis. They're not a race, they're just terrible. Sorry.
Is it offensive to do that accent? Like, no.
It seems like the entire shtick is offensive to anybody from Central Europe. But then I don't know if you guys have actually seen the second movie. The way
I have.
Yeah,
it's fucking brilliant. Sorry.
It's brilliant. The way it wraps things up, it's like, okay, I did find some of the shtick that he did throughout this kind of offensive in the way that he's sort of generalizing a Central European culture or whatever. But then the way he wraps things up, it's like, okay, that's kind of a good story, and I can't really fault him on the bad stuff. And then the way he kind of turns things over on America, it's like, okay, I'm just going to give him a pass. It's complicated.
Yeah.
I'll let it go.
like especially in the last couple of years, I think that Sacha Baron Cohen is like a fucking national treasure, man. Like
Yes.
the fucking shit that he got, like congressmen and Senate members to do
You really
in
do
Who is American is, I mean, like like that's just totally separate from the movie. I mean, it's just, oh god, it's like the amount of shit that he actually got them to do is just like, it's just unbelievable. The fact that, like, what was it? A guy actually had to fucking resign because he had his ass out and he was chasing Sasha around the fucking room, chanting USA and like screaming the N-word at the top of his lungs because he thought that if he touched his bare ass, that like a fucking ISIS member would turn gay and then kill. Like, it's just like, dude, like the level of like, oh, it's just, I don't know. I just think it's just amazing.
On that same level, I mean, when he's targeting like elites or something like that, or American politicians, I think that's interesting. But when you watch like especially the second one, there are instances like, I mean, you know, they're supposed to be pranking these people, right? Like they're not in on the joke, and he is getting them to engage in transactions that are overtly criminal. He is behaving as if he is trafficking this girl. It's clearly a sex trafficking situation, and they're just sort of surrendering to their capitalist bias, like, oh, well, the customer's always right, I guess, and just sort of going with it, like, well, who am I to judge? Like, you're a citizen, and you can judge somebody who is trying to traffic in human slavery, and it doesn't matter. He can get them to sort of go along with it. But man, the question that he asked the guy about how big of a propane tank does he need? Is this enough to kill X number of people? And the guy ventures his opinion. Is just like that. Brilliant.
So thank you for inviting me to this discussion, I guess.
Sorry, this has been all over the place.
I know. This was supposed to be an after party for a mathpig thing, and it hasn't really kind of turned out that way. But look, such is life.
So, just out of curiosity, how many of you are from the States versus elsewhere?
I am.
I'm from the States.
Okay.
I think Steve,
I'm Irish, in case the accent hasn't kind of
No,
given it away.
Yeah.
He's from the state of the county down. Or
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not sure if you're from Northern Ireland or Ireland proper, but
Republic.
Ireland proper. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Actual Ireland. I know that mathpig might be still in the comment sections. Yeah.
I'm not supposed to say that anymore. I think I actually said that around mathpig. He's like, "Hey, no," and I was like, "Whoa, sorry." Ireland proper, actual Ireland. He's just like, "Fuck you." I'm like, "Okay, fair enough." Sorry.
You said you were from rural Iowa. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, you had a lot of run-ins with racism. I apologize for that. I've been on the planet for a lot longer than you have, and while I've been a victim of racism, I don't see it as a major issue these days. So.
I definitely do. I mean, I think the cops just gunning down innocent black people in the streets is definitely a problem.
I gave you a good article, and then there was a retort on the article that I gave you, and I'm not arguing there's no racial bias, but the article, the link in there, I think you'll find interesting.
Oh yeah, I've read that paper. I don't think it's yet peer reviewed. Not that that's necessarily a problem, but I do like peer review just because it shows that something has been reviewed by people in the relevant fields to examine whether or not the information is in fact accurate.
Yes, but if they're correctly representing the data that they evaluated, then I think peer review is less of a factor. I mean, you should be able to check their facts, right?
Well, and that's part of what the peer review process is for, is to check facts. I also have some links as well. I have actually several links that not just talk about how black people are targeted more by the police, but how the police consistently engage in misconduct in general.
Right. I just think we're solving the wrong problem. Where you think it's racism, I think it's bad policing. I think it's training. I think it's relaxing of police standards.
What is a result?
I don't know.
results from the
Actually,
bad policing? Like,
I just want to. I want to
racism?
venture. Sorry, I want to venture something out there. One of the problems, it's actually even in the abstract of the story that you're talking about. This is something that comes up quite a bit. There aren't very good statistics and tracking of a lot of these police shootings. They don't track officers involved. They don't track, even basic demographics of the officers involved. Oftentimes, incidents go unreported. There's no kind of national tracking database or anything like this. So studies of these are usually based on very incomplete data. And so they end up having to assume into things. They basically have to walk around a lot of big assumptions. So if the idea about this is that, okay, if you start by thinking basically the system is okay, there are these outliers, that's a faulty assumption. If you're trying to assume basically the system's not okay, but there's some good things to it, that's also making huge assumptions. The problem is that the amount of information collected regarding a lot of these issues with policing just isn't complete enough to make a lot of these assumptions. And most of the studies that we have that anyone can point to are not comprehensive enough to really make sound decisions on this. So most of the stuff that they need to start doing involves just information gathering before they can start making conclusions.
And I welcome that. And the study that I cited, they actually draw that conclusion that this is an incomplete view. They need more study data to present their findings.
Right.
So I'm not arguing that. I'm just arguing that as this study, based on this set of facts, they did not find systemic racism as being a major factor. Like I said, I'm not claiming that there's not a problem with the police. I think there is. I just don't think it's systemic, and nor do I think it's across all police departments.
But I think that's kind of a touchy thing to do, because if you're trying to say, well, I don't think that systemic racism is really a problem, trying to factor in something as kind of notoriously hard to pin down as systemic racism to something like systemic, police brutality or racial disparities and how the police do their job, without better metrics, you're not really going to be able to make those conclusions one way or the other.
Right.
So to just say it's not systemic racism, you cannot make that conclusion in an honest way. You simply can't. At best, all you can do is be like, it could be systemic racism. It might not be. Maybe more studies needed.
That argument works both ways, right?
That's what I just said. Like the demonstrable thing that we end up having is you end up having something that happens to the public, like the George Floyd killing, right? You end up having an officer with his knee in this guy's neck for 9 minutes, and he eventually dies from this exposure, right? Now, granted, he had comorbidities. Turns out he actually had COVID. He had a lot of different issues going on with him. People want that, and then you want to turn around and say, hey, don't believe your lying eyes. It's more complicated than that. Not in that particular case. The way they handled that, and even in the additional footage that you got, the chest cam footage, other officers on that scene were concerned about the way they were handling this guy. They were concerned about the fact that they had him on the ground in that position. They didn't mention the knee in the neck, but they were concerned that they had him on his chest like that. And the victim can suffocate on their chest with their hands behind their back without somebody sticking their meaty knee in their neck.
So I think
another thing about
I think we have both. I think we're both of our positions. I'm saying the factor was poor police training to even allow that type of show to occur.
These guys were trained against this.
They
took training that counteracted that.
Actually, that was current police procedure in a lot of departments, and I'm claiming, yes, we do have a problem with the police, but it's a relaxing of policing standards. And like I cited that some police departments
a published paper. Yeah, you cited what I would consider a reputable source. I'm not denying that. I think this is a very reputable source. And I've read it before. I'm kind of skimming through it again now because it's been about a half a year. I would say maybe since like June or July since I've read it. I don't know even when it was published. Let me scroll back up to the top here.
And that source is really just calling out.
Yeah, it was from May of 2020. Yeah.
How big is this problem, and what are the problems that we're seeing? I'm not saying we shouldn't address problems in the policing. Yes, obviously, I don't think it's across every department. I think we saw a relaxing of policing standards, and I think we saw some police departments, civil forfeiture, I'd throw it as a poor policy, right? certain police departments began to be seen as profit centers. It went from protect and serve to lock up and collect, fueling the court systems with citations.
I don't agree with civil forfeiture, but they didn't usually generate a profit. Well, they were basically
profit in certain counties and cities.
They were just used. Usually, they were used to plug a bunch of budget holes. Usually, the cities that were putting those in there were already bleeding money, and the reason they put that in there was because that's what. I don't agree with civil forfeiture, but the idea of saying that this is just a way to kind of turn it into now it does have the potential of doing that. I think it has a corrupting influence, but by and large, most of the time that it was ever used, if it's brought up, especially if they're trying to gin up public support for it, it's usually used because we're strapped for cash and we need this money. Let's take it from drug dealers and criminals.
I did want to jump in here really quick because the thing with systemic racism is not arguing that all police officers are racist or that even all police departments are racist. What it is asserting is that the structure of the way that we go about things is designed to target people in a way that is masked, that we're not capable of seeing, that we are in fact structuring this in a way that targets people generally of a particular demographic in an unfair advantage. I don't think that the most police officers are racist, but I do think that the way that the system protects police officers, and we know that they do because we know their unions hire their lawyers and fight for them in the courts. What we're saying is that the system is structured in a way that is less favorable to criminals or potential criminals who are not white, preferably black, than it is to those who are white. It isn't stating that all police departments are racist. It isn't stating that all police officers are racist. It is stating that the ways in which they are governed, the ways in which they are protected, and the methods that they are taught are designed specifically to target a particular demographic over any other. And we can see this with stop and frisk, which was used overwhelmingly to target black men.
I don't disagree with that. I think that racial bias does exist in certain police departments. My argument would be if you look at the police departments that are having this issue, why haven't they been fixed? They've been
because the problem is systemic. A systemic problem cannot be fixed from the system that created it. That is why we are seeing the protests that we are seeing. That is why we are seeing the outrage that we are seeing. And in fact, in many of these protests, these Black Lives Matter, these BLM protests, especially in Minneapolis and just recently in Philadelphia. And I do want to make a distinction really quickly between the protests and the rioting and looting, because I think we can all acknowledge that those are not the same thing. It's been mainly white people that have been involved. Obviously, black people are heavily involved. There are Mexicans involved. There are many non-white people involved. But we can't expect the system to fix problems that the system has created. Right. And at this point, I think that a lot of these problems have been ingrained in the system to the extent and hidden by legislation to the point that many people, even in the system, who are not racist and who might even fervently disagree with what the system does, aren't capable of recognizing what the system does, which is, I think, the nature of systemic racism.
I believe that a lot of what you said is correct. But I would say that a valid movement was hijacked. I would also state that Black Lives Matter, while it is a attractive idea or movement, I think they should be very careful about what cases they select to promote that movement, because they weaken their own argument by selecting poor cases. Because there's excellent examples out there where the police were clearly in the wrong. So when we jump with these passions without having all the facts, that's my concern.
I
agree with that. Yes,
I agree with part of what you're saying, but I
bear out that the problem is as big as that we're making out to be. It may be. Like I said, I do believe that there's racial bias in policing in certain departments, a good number of departments. But I'm also saying that that's caused by a loosening of policing standards, and then the movement of, rather than protect and serve, to lock up and collect. I mean, it's kind of.
I agree with that. But my question would be really quick. Number one, I'm not necessarily making any statements to how pervasive the problem is. I am simply making a statement that there is a problem. And I maybe you agree with that. I would assume you probably agree with that there is a problem, even if we can't really pin down how pervasive it is. In terms of making lax laws for police officers, my question would be, and I'm not necessarily stating that it is based in racism, but I do question why we are relaxing a lot of the regulations that we have on police officers. Again, I'm not stating that it has anything to do with racism, because it might not, but it's still wrong. And I think that you would agree with that.
Well, a lot of the relaxing of the policing standards came about based on social justice standards. I think that in certain occupations there should be one standard. You either meet it or you don't. And
what do you mean by social justice standards?
Yeah.
Well, you had a lowering of standards for becoming police. I mean, back in the 60s and early 70s, you had to have a
I got what you meant by that. The social justice, it wasn't really social justice. It was a way of increasing the ability for us to incarcerate people, to increase the profits of those privatized companies that are involved in criminal justice, like the companies that own prisons. And I would say that this is what I believe, and I think that there's a fair amount of data to support it, is that those laws often, or not those laws, but the relaxing of these laws often allowed the system to target particular demographics over others.
I think they were well intentioned. But I think they caused some issues. And so, but my argument for not relaxing standards is certain occupations you just don't do that. I could point out.
I agree completely.
I could point out certain
standards,
instances where a police officer has shot somebody, was a female, and you could tell that she shot that person. She almost shot other fellow officers because she was scared at the time of that incident.
Okay, here we go.
I think I might know what case you're talking. Actually, no. I think I might know what case he's talking about. I don't know it off the top of my head, but he's not wrong there. There was a female officer who shot somebody, and then ended up friendly fire on the officers due to a fear in the situation, and it was just a huge shit show. I cannot remember what that was off the top of my head, but I do not think that woman was in the right in that situation.
I want to point out a counterexample of this. This actually happened in the area that I live. One particular evening, there was this guy, for whatever reason, in my hometown. I was out running errands and stuff, picking up dinner, and I actually had my younger brother with me in the car, and I'm on my way home, and we noticed that there were cops everywhere. Almost at every intersection, just local police, state police, they were all over the place. On my way back home, I'm 4 blocks away from the house. I get pulled over by a cop. Cop pulls me over and tells me that initially that the reason that he pulled me over was for a failure to stop completely at a stop sign. And then he tells me later, my car matched a description of somebody. So I'm like, okay, well, which one is it? So he hands me a ticket. It was bogus. I take it and I leave. It turns out that the reason that the cops were out at that particular evening was because one particular police officer got angry with his girlfriend, got incredibly drunk, pulled his pistol out and shot himself in the foot. He then, in order to cover up for this weird mistake, called into the police station and made the accusation, and it was a very specific accusation, that he engaged with a perpetrator during his off-hour duties, and this person engaged him and attacked him. The perpetrator was black and drove a particular kind of car, drove away from the scene, shot him in the foot, and then took off. Every cop in that local area swarmed that hometown looking for this perpetrator, right? And it made it into the news, and everybody was looking for this black guy that shot a cop in his foot. It wasn't until about a 36-hour period later that people finally got this guy to sober up and then recant his bullshit story, that we then realized, oh, okay, this guy had just wound everybody up because he was trying to cover up the mistake. This is a male cop. There are lots of stories when you start talking about situations in which there's relaxed standards. What I usually end up hearing is that by relaxed standards, it's we just let Debbie on the force, and Debbie gets a little nervous around tall people, and she tends to get a little pull happy with her pistol. This is usually the allegation. This is a myth. There are police statistics that that confirm this is not something that consistently happens with female police officers, and yet it's a narrative that continually gets put out there. The counterexample that I just gave was Hysterical Jim, or whatever the fuck his name was, spun up a wild and crazy tale of a wild black man that was roaming this mostly white neighborhood that, for some whatever reason, aggressively shot Hysterical Jim in his foot. And this actually set out a chain reaction of arrests that affected the entire town in a negative way because all the cops just assumed that Hysterical Jim must be on the level because he's one of theirs.
Well, hold on. Who was at fault there?
That crazy ass,
Yes,
the crazy cop,
exactly.
and then a culture
Reacted to that,
and a police culture that was willing to assume the worst about the invented perpetrator because he was black, and the supposed honesty of Hysterical Jim because he's one of theirs. So with good old-fashioned tribalism combined with some good old-fashioned American racism led to me getting a fucking ticket.
We need to be very careful about attacking racism on every charge, because he could have been green or blue, wouldn't have mattered.
No, it actually came up in his trial because he specifically said the perpetrator was a person of color. And when the judge asked him, why was that important? Like, well, I just thought it would get more attention. And he was right. It fucking did. It did.
Yeah.
It's a mostly white town, and we're rural. And people are scared of black people.
Can I say
and I think we're making a similar argument as well. One standard, you meet the standard. There's good cops, there's bad cops. You find bad cops, you get rid of bad cops.
Okay, but when somebody like you starts talking about relaxed standards, and the first reaction you go to is 5 Foot Debbie or something like this. It was this girl, and she flipped out. There's plenty of stories of failure cops, male and female. Relaxing standards doesn't have anything to do with the fact that they hired a woman.
I also think that cops being that nervous on the force is not a good thing, because if you're that nervous, you shouldn't be a cop.
Exactly.
Either that,
why is my name changed?
either.
It's the fucking line from, what is it, 21 Jump Street?
Yeah,
my name's Jeff.
Jeff.
And certainly don't
Literally just copped onto it. I'm going to change it back now, sorry.
But if we and I think everybody in the room here is in agreement. We definitely need better training with cops in the United States of America. If you're so on edge and so scared that you're going to pull your gun and shoot at the first plastic bag that goes blowing across the road, why are you becoming a cop? Oftentimes, I think that this is an excuse to justify, and regardless of race, that I would state that it tends to happen more often with black people, but regardless of race, I think that what happens is this is an excuse pulled by officers as a way of justifying their mistreatment of whatever particular individual or individuals that they're dealing with. Well, I got scared. I feared for my life. Your first reaction, I don't think that the first reaction should be to pull out your pistol and shoot to kill. It isn't in most other countries, and I don't think it should be here, but it is. And I've even had people say,
we should do all training that involves reactive shooting methods. That should not be a training standard in the U.S. Mm-hmm. You don't teach That's what you teach military people, reactive shooting methods.
Actually,
you don't do that.
Military is often better trained than police officers are, because there are rules of engagement.
Yes, but they're still taught a reactive shooting method. At least they were in the 60s. Now,
in some sense, definitely back then.
There's no place in our police force. And no police forces should be teaching reactive shooting methods. And
I agree. Yes.
And there are NRA instructors that have stopped police training because they were asked to teach that method, and they refused to do that.
And I agree with that. And I have met people that have been on the force or associated with it that have said some of the things that I learned when I was in the academy, I definitely did not walk away keeping. I did not agree with someone, and it's not that they were explicitly racist, it's just that they were explicitly reactionary. And I think that I think you're right. I think that is one of the issues with cops, is that at least to some degree they are trained to be reactionary in scenarios where they shouldn't be reactionary.
Of course.
Can I
go ahead, Mr. Parker. You've been itching to get in here.
Yeah, you've been very, very quiet, man.
Yeah, I was busy. I was busy for quite a while. I posted a study about something I find interesting was what happens when you legalize marijuana in states, and what happens when police do traffic stops. 2012 in Colorado, before they legalized it, marijuana, the search rate for traffic stops was over 1% for black people, for black drivers, and at the time it was 0.5 for white drivers. And after they legalized it, it nearly like dropped like 60% after they legalized it. And maybe that's just something that just happens because you legalize it, so there's no reason to search people. But I think that's a kind of I know this is a little bit off topic about what we're discussing, but it's just something I noticed quickly. It was like the moment we give them not a reason to search someone, they actually stop doing that. And I'm like, this is kind of a problem. I don't know.
Yeah. And when were we talking about reactive shooting methods?
Yeah,
Racial bias. That's
that's what a little bit close to that.
What I
racial
think
bias.
is that reactionary policies that are taught are often used in scenarios where race becomes a big issue. I don't think that all cops are racist, but I do think that there is an explicit, I would argue, explicit history of racism that is higher than the general public in our institutions of justice, namely our police departments. We can see it. I mean, how many times have we all heard of stories where a white man commits a crime and gets 7 months in prison or jail, and then a black man commits the same crime with no previous convictions on him, where the white person had like 1 or 2, and ends up in jail for 9 years?
Or a kid shoots up a black church and gets McDonald's on the way to jail.
Yeah, but you have a 12-year-old black kid playing with a toy gun, albeit, yes, the orange cap was taken off of it, which is wrong, but he gets murdered by the police.
And again, that's bad policing, right?
It is bad policing. But I do think that there is systemic racism. And again, that is not stating that every institution or every individual a part of that institution is racist, or necessarily that even any of them are. It's more stating that there are policies that can then be used to target specific demographics. And I think that the stop and frisk policy passed by Mike Bloomberg in New York is the best example, which was actually ruled to be unconstitutional because of how it was used to target almost exclusively black people, where they showed that this was applied to black people at 90-something% of the time. I think that that is the perfect example of what systemic racism is. And let's be honest here. We all know somebody that's been walking somewhere at night and sees a black person walking down the street and walks to the other side of the street. People just have inherent bias. I think everybody has some level of inherent bias against people. And I also believe that that is something that should be overcome. But I think, and the funny thing is that systemic racism, and specifically the criminal justice system in the United States, is so well documented, it's not even up for debate within the realms of academia. It really isn't. My sister has a criminal justice degree. Another one of my friends who was a military police officer in the United States Marine Corps has a criminal justice degree. And he says, I don't agree with all charges of racism in the system, but he says, I do believe that there is systemic racism simply because this debate has been settled in academia. The data is in. There is systemic racism in our criminal justice system in this nation.
I would say that the outcome that you face when you face the justice system is based more on money, how much money you have, and how well you can be represented than necessarily your race. I think that if you're a poor white person or a poor black person, you're going to be screwed in court.
I can agree with that, but the thing is that who's more likely to be poor? White people or black people? And that in itself demonstrates systemic racism, where we have an economic structure that pushes black people more often into the fringes of poverty than white people, and then a police system that targets those in poverty. That explicitly is what systemic racism is.
I think the black community was systematically targeted for destruction. I think that through maybe well-intentioned policies that didn't work out to be well-intentioned, and then if you really review these policies, I would say, was that an accident that occurred? I don't think it was an accident. So that's my problem, is we're fighting the wrong problem. There was a destruction of the black family. And when you lock up all the fathers and you incentivize single mothers, you basically destroy the black family. There was a total reversal from the 60s to now.
Providing social welfare to single moms does not incentivize a person to be a single parent.
It's how many. Right. So
if the government offered you a handout because you were poor and happened to be a single parent, would you think that you were being incentivized to be in those life circumstances?
No. What happens is
exactly. So don't say that they're being incentivized.
You actually get more. And my wife was poor. She can tell you this. You actually get more if you don't have a husband or a boyfriend in the house. There's so. What do you mean not true?
Well, no, I said naturally, as in, I mean, if there's only
only one earner,
you tend to get more, because even two income earning, a double income earning household can still receive some subsidization, but it's less.
You should be incentivizing the behavior of not. I think you should get just as much money if you're poor and you're trying to make it. Then if you're a couple, you should get just as much money as if you're a single mother.
It really depends on how many kids you have and all that. That really adds into it, and plus you have to make less than a certain income.
Exactly. Say you have a two-parent household. They're both working and receiving an income. But let's say they make $50K a year. Let's say they get $7,000 from the government to help. They need that money. I don't think that a single-parent income where they're only making $27,000 a year should only get $7,000. If they're getting, say, and let's not worry about whether the numbers are accurate. Obviously, this is a contrived hypothetical. Say they're getting $13,000 from the government subsidies. I think that's justified because you're one less income than the other one, and so you need more. And I think a lot of the problem, I think a lot of that problem could be solved. And this goes back to the socioeconomic issues that I think drive systemic racism. Is we need to do things like raise the minimum wage. We need to invest in worker unions, and this is why I'm a market socialist. I believe that workers should control the economy and have a say in how the businesses that they work at are governed.
There's another problem with this too, is that a lot of times the way, since we're moving into welfare, a lot of the times the way that welfare ends up getting discussed is about whether it's about whether or not people deserve it or not. That is not appropriate public policy. The best public policy, public monies, welfare money that is spent on whether they're a two parents, one parent, a gay couple, whatever. That money is going to a company, because what are those people going to take that government money and do? They're going to go and spend it on their kids. They're buying groceries from they're buying groceries from the grocery store. They're buying diapers. They're buying clothes. They're buying school books.
I want to add on to what
it's immediately paid in.
I want to add on to what you're saying, Jeff, because a good example of this, and this data comes directly from the USDA, is that for every dollar that is spent on the food stamps program, it returns $1.73 back into the economy.
It's one of the most stimulative things that you can do.
Programs do not sap our economy; they actually help contribute to it. The thing is, the more money people have, the more they have to spend at their local businesses, at their local restaurants. They can go out to eat more often. They can buy furniture from the local furniture store. And this is why I believe in raising the minimum wage, because it puts more money into the pockets of the spenders, the people who will spend. And it goes back to an old adage: give a rich man, or rather, give a poor man $100 and he spends it. Give a rich man $100 and he puts it in his offshore bank account. Which does more good for our economy?
You're talking about velocity of money, and
yes. Oh my God! I have to say, I love the fact that you use that term. I absolutely love it, because when I mention that term, always people are like, what does that mean? So I absolutely admire you for using that term greatly.
And I don't disagree with that. What I'm trying to say is well-intentioned policies sometimes become a trap. And
I can agree with that.
And our welfare system should be a hand up. It should never be a trap. We should be trying to improve these people's lives so they can aspire to stand on their own feet, right? Mm-hmm. And there should not be multi-generational people or families that are locked into the despair of a social welfare program.
Okay, agreed. But here's the problem with that. We end up spending money on social welfare problems for failure of the fact that most jobs are provided for by a private market, right? It's private industry that usually ends up having the jobs to hire these people. If you run into instances of an economic downturn where private capital and capitalists don't have the kinds of industries and don't have the numbers of jobs to actually employ everybody, you have a bunch of people sitting around who need money and can't spend it. And you have a bunch of businesses that are operating that need customers and don't have them because all the customers are dead, or just dead fucking broke. So you end up having to do something at some point to do this. So it's one thing to say, oh, well, it's just good intentions because we want to make ourselves feel better that we're not letting these people go poor. No, even from a capitalist perspective, this just makes good sense. If you want those businesses to stay operational and viable, you need to funnel them paying customers. And the only way that you can funnel them that is if those customers have money to pay. The other thing that you could do is you could actually, instead of paying them directly to go out and spend it in a capitalist market system, you could just give them a job. You could hire them to work somewhere, but you got to do something. And it's not about what people deserve. It's about what the society fucking needs. And what it needs is people buying and selling to each other and people being able to actually make their way. If they need money to buy food and pay for shelter, you have to figure out a way to provide them that. If you leave that crap up to other private operators and pretend like you're not responsible for it, brush your hands clean and say, charity doesn't make a difference, you can watch your economy just kill itself off. Yeah. That's how you see an economy.
We're seeing that right now.
We construct our economy in the way that certain industries have moved offshore, and how we become I guess the term. I've just lost the term. Why is that?
Let me give you.
Were you going to say crony capitalism?
No, not crony capitalism.
I was going to bring up the example. Japan. Japan
is
from
manufacturing to a
oligarchy, corporatism.
No, it's. My brain is fried. It's basically the industries that were not manufacturing anything. Were
service industries.
Services. We went from a manufacturing economy to a service.
A gig economy where jobs just don't pay enough to incentivize people to get those jobs. That's another reason I believe in raising the minimum wage. I mean, I believe in going further than that.
I believe in a
socialist market. I believe in market socialism, where over a certain number of employees, every employee the government mandates that all employees have a share in that business, not necessarily an equal share, but a share in that business and an ability to vote on how it operates. But
I think that kills basically innovation when you do that.
I don't think so. The data is in, and it shows that worker co-ops survive the first 3 years, which are the hardest years of a business, better than privately owned businesses do. They can survive economic downturns better. People are more happy at their work. They feel that what they do is better, and it doesn't do there's no evidence actually that stifles innovation. In fact, most innovation in this country was not the result of the private market. It was the result of government incentives, the internet, immunizations, electricity, the U.S. interstate highway system, the EPA, public education, the USPS. None of these are private institutions, but they all function well and they provide much needed services to people, and people still have an incentive to use them. Nowadays, we might see that some of these are being privatized because private businesses bought the patents, and especially with say immunizations or other forms of medications, private companies are buying those patents and then marking up the price of this service or product hundreds of times and then selling it back to the public. I think that's wrong. And I think that worker co-ops are a good way to stifle that and actually help innovation by de-incentivizing the monopolization of certain industries.
I guess the difference is, for most of my career, I guess I've been a greedy capitalist. I've made hand over fist, and I would
We all
argue,
have them.
and I would argue. Like, I work in the IT industry. I've worked for manufacturers. I've basically made a ton of money, and I would always argue when my compensation was discussed that I would be compensated based on my own efforts, not the efforts of people in my region or people in my district.
Oh
That's
yeah,
franchising.
Again, I understand what you're saying there in terms of like you believe that you need to be rewarded according to the work that you're providing. When it comes to social aid, oftentimes what ends up getting thrown out there in order to like talk about the issue is what these people deserve. And it's very easy to paint people who are down on their luck and not working as not deserving anything. It's sort of a weird Matthew principle. This person has something and invested it and earned more, therefore they deserve to get more. And this person that has nothing and has lost everything deserves to get nothing. That's a fucked up way of doing anything. If you want to actually take care of an economy, let's put aside anything that people might say about like the feelings noise we might feel for actually caring about fellow citizens. Let's just keep it totally pragmatic. We want to keep an economy humming. You want to take federal money, funnel it to those poor people, get them spending. It's as simple as that. That helps out every private capitalist that's selling a product. Because they're selling it to those people, and those people can afford to go and buy.
We need to restructure our economy. Being solely reliant on a service-based economy is not a good idea. Having large agriculture in monocultures is not a good idea.
Oh, don't even get me started on the agricultural monopolies, because they have done nothing but absolutely devastate farmers. Controlling market values for commodities is insane.
And why did all these things come about? It's because
profit. It's if I can monopolize an industry and absorb as much market share as possible, I can max it. And see, that's what monopolization is. It's buying up your competition so that customers are forced to go to you. If customers are forced to go to you for a particular product or service that they require, you can charge whatever you want because there's nobody else offering it at a lower price. So they're buying up market share. This is what Amazon did. This is why Jeff Bezos is as wealthy as he is, despite the fact that it's his workers that generate all of that wealth, which is part of the reason that I'm a market socialist. I think wealth should be not equally but equitably shared amongst, and see that goes into another discussion. I don't believe that people who don't actually work in the factories and work in the plants and drive the trucks and drive the forklifts and do the welding and run the machines should be getting the vast majority of the wealth that the firm creates. I think that it should be equitably distributed amongst the people whose labor actually generates that wealth. That's part of the reason that I'm a market socialist, because worker co-ops do that. You are paid according to what you do. When you make everybody a contributor, an actual owner of this company, they feel like, okay, well, I own part of this company. What I do matters. What I don't do matters. And so I have a greater incentive to contribute more. Think about the 23-year-old who works at McDonald's for, say, $10 an hour. Do you really think he gives a shit about his job aside from doing the bare minimum to avoid getting fired? Probably not. That's why your meals get fucked up. But think of the person who would work there but actually owns a part of that, say, franchise or that company, who now has an incentive to do better because the better they do, the more they get paid. That provides them the incentive to actually work, to contribute, to do more, to make sure that customers are happy, to go above and beyond for customers. Providing workers with an incentive to contribute to our society, I think, ensures that they do, and ensures a stronger, better society. And one of the arguments I always give people is we are the United States of America. We have always been innovators, and right now is the time to innovate and structure our economy in a way that incentivizes the workers to do everything they can to make our country, make our economy as strong as it can be. Personally, I think worker co-ops, I think market socialism is the best way forward for that.
I think there's other ways to accomplish that. I think you could accomplish that easily through stock incentives to your employees, so they share the.
That would be market socialism.
Yeah,
that would literally be market socialism.
Yes,
where every worker becomes an investor. That's what I'm saying.
And
But
now
not
you
every-
now you have a
remember,
Hang on, Leo.
every
Hang on.
company-
drive.
Not every
Leo.
company is
Leo.
large enough to have
Leo,
stocks.
2
So
seconds.
that's why I say worker
Leo.
co-ops.
Parker's,
Leo.
I just wanted to specify.
yeah, Parker was trying to say something.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I
yeah,
apologize.
what Leo's talking about is, getting stocks paid in your paycheck. So for Starbucks, I don't really fully understand it, but like after you've worked there for like 2 years, you actually get stocks, like you actually get investments in the companies. And Forbes did an article about it and how this one lady's been working there since it was like what year was it? 1992. And once they went public, they were giving her like public shares. And we all know how Starbucks is doing right now. They're doing fantastic. They're doing amazing. And they've had this model for, I think, a decade now or so. Like it's been for quite a while. And I don't understand why. And you see that with McDonald's and franchising. The amount you are paid is dependent on how much that franchise makes, and everything else. Like what you were complaining about socialism and whatnot is what happens with franchisees like McDonald's and Burger King and all these other big fast food places. That's what's currently happening. Franchisees make profits and they fight each other in their own area, because if they make more money, they get paid more money. And if there's 2 McDonald's in an area, they will fight the other McDonald's.
Yeah, but
because they're taking their money.
also going to be regional, right? So you're wherever your franchise is located is going to draw a certain amount of people from the local community. So there's only so much you can do to drive profits, right?
Which is usually like if you're going to have a competitive marketplace, this ends up becoming a problem, at least from a public policy perspective. If you're going to have more or less a competitive marketplace that includes labor and you got people fighting it over, let's say it's not even just 2 different branches of Starbucks, it's just 2 different coffee companies. One of them kicks the other one's ass and leaves a bunch of people unemployed. Well, now there's 2 different ways that this can work out. Both companies are running under the same model. Each one of them is paying their employees a wage plus stock options. Well, once the one company goes busto, the stock is probably worth nothing. And at that point, those people are now in a situation which I described before. You have a bunch of idle citizens waiting to get work who don't have the money to buy things in a market economy that desperately needs consumers, which is where a public option comes along in the form of social welfare, usually food stamps and stuff, pays them money directly so they can go out and buy those goods and services to keep the economy going.
Well, you could actually diversify your stock options, by the way. So
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you could, but here's the problem. Everything that happened with those employers and their employees was basically just left up to the private markets. And then if something goes wrong, it's like, oh, well, this person should have done this or done that with their stuff. Okay, well, if they leave it up to the private market, let's say that some poor bastard in that group, the vast majority of them, they do diversify their stock portfolio before the cafe goes busto, and they manage to diversify it into funds that also have a sink. You hit some kind of economic downturn, they have no money. This is the kind of stuff that happens. You cannot possibly plan for this kind of stuff. Basing it on this rhetoric of what people deserve is bad policy. You base it on what the economy needs, and what you need, what the economy needs is people buying and selling shit.
Really, really quickly, I want to add on to what Jeff said, because he's alluding to a point here. And honestly, Vince, I think you might agree with this here, but maybe not. But I think you would, is that I think we can all recognize that when a company does particularly well in profits, all they do is buy back their shares, stock repurchases, which do nothing for the workers unless they own shares. Most workers in most companies, the vast majority of them don't. It just further enriches the already exorbitantly wealthy shareholders. On top of that, they give the larger bonuses to the CEOs and the executives. But when a company does particularly bad in terms of profits, they fire workers, they don't expand manufacturing, what have you. So what we see is that when a company does well, they privatize the profits from that. But when a company does terribly, they socialize the risks. And I think that's wrong. And I think that that is an inherent facet of capitalism, because I think, and this is what I think, is that under a capitalist structure, what you have is a system designed to deliver a very large amount of profit to a very small amount of people through a system by which we can squeeze as much profit out of a firm and funnel it to a very small amount of high-ranking individuals in that firm without equitably distributing those funds, those profits to the very people whose labor generated those profits. That's why I agree with market socialism. And another thing is, I think it's only about like somewhere between 12 and 15% of all companies in the United States are on the stock market. The rest aren't. So they don't have a stock option. However, if you made say if you have a company like, some of you might know the name, others might not, but here in Iowa, we have Sukup Manufacturing Company. They're a good example to use. They make grain bins, grain elevators, grain dryers, steel buildings. They're an agricultural company, an agricultural manufacturing company. They have, on average, and it varies, based on the busy season and whatnot, about 500 employees. They pay not very well for how large the company is, and they're not very well known for paying well despite longevity with the company. So they're they are a good example of what most companies are like. And I'm going to try not to be too long-winded here, but please forgive me if I am. Imagine if every company was a part, or rather, if every employee were a part owner in that company and could partake in not an equal, because equal means everybody gets the same, but an equitable, which means everybody gets what they have earned or what they deserve or what they need. So imagine that they got an equitable share of the profits of this company. It's about a $200 to $250 million a year company. They have plenty of money to pay all 500 of their workers a very good wage and give them a very good standard of living. But you would never see that because the two brothers that own it, Steve Sukup and Charles Sukup, are more concerned with squeezing profit out of their laborers, the ones who actually generate it, and collecting it themselves rather than equitably distributing that profit amongst the individuals whose labor generated it. However, if every employee were a part owner in this company, they now have the incentive to do better, knowing that the better I do, the more profit the company makes, the more money I make. So you have a direct incentive to do better.
You'll see that more when companies are in the innovative phase, and some of the stuff that you were talking about is more prevalent in financial institutions or financial companies. So there are companies that put a lot of money back into the business.
There are some, yes,
that treat their employees very well, but some of this, what you were talking about, can be solved in different ways. One would be tort reform would be a good way to solve some of this.
What was that? What reform?
Tort reform.
No.
Could you explain what that is? I'm sorry, I don't know what it is. Forgive my ignorance. Could you explain what that is for me, please?
Civil tort reform, basically a practice of large companies is to sue your competitor out of business. So when you're in the innovative phase and you're an entrepreneur and starting a company, you thrive based on what you innovate. But if you have a large company that's able to sue you and keep you in court, they can drive you out of business. So tort reform would involve not allowing that to happen by saying that loser pays. So if you bring a frivolous lawsuit against this small business and you lose, you pay that company. That doesn't happen right now. So you literally can lock someone up in court and drive them out of business, and that's what's happening. So
no. It isn't.
I don't.
Hang on. What that is, tort reform has been a bugaboo of conservative thinkers for a long time. I know, because I used to be a conservative, and I used to think it was a good idea. If you're under the impression that people out there can just file willy-nilly lawsuits against companies, wrap them up in court, and hold up their profit-making abilities, this sounds like an excellent thing that needs to be reformed. The unfortunate thing is it's based on a fantasy. If this were really a problem, most of the financial gains that have occurred in this country wouldn't have happened by virtue of the narrative that they spin. Tort reform is right-wing propaganda to try to limit legal options for people seeking grievances against corporations. That's it.
Okay, you're talking about people suing a company. Maybe we handle that differently. Have a company suing another company.
It could be the same thing. It essentially limits the amount of litigation provided to a complainant against someone they have a grievance with.
I'm not arguing for that. I'm arguing that if you bring a frivolous case and you lose, you pay dearly to the person that won the case.
Okay, that's the trick, though. If you set it up so that, okay, let's say that I'm somebody or I'm a company, and I'm looking at, like, I think this company has done me wrong. I want to file a suit against them because of some kind of anti-capitalistic or anti-business processes. But the stakes are, if I file that lawsuit and I lose, I'm now out everything. You
Not out
basically
everything. You're out what the other company had to pay to defend themselves against that lawsuit.
okay. The problem with that is that you've basically disincentivized people from actually bringing up grievances against malefactors, and
No,
you've provided cover for somebody can actually do something bad and basically say, look, if you want, you can sue me against it, you can sue me for it, but just keep in mind, if you lose, you owe me. That is tort reform. It's never been this has only been a popular thing for companies to use to railroad people for things like class action lawsuits and all sorts of other stuff. It is not good policy, and it's not necessary.
You shouldn't fear tort reform. It would get rid of frivolous lawsuits.
It wouldn't.
And it would also probably get rid of class action lawsuits.
No, because the only people that could then file those kinds of lawsuits would be big players that could afford to sue it. All you would do is force litigation into a tier in which it's literally more pay to play than it already is right now. That's all you do. You're not going to change anything. You actually create more of a moral dilemma with that kind of system than you have right now. You're not preventing anything.
And why would you want to get rid of class action lawsuits if there's a good reason behind the class action lawsuit?
Well, I think what he's arguing is it wouldn't necessarily it wouldn't get rid of class action lawsuit as long as the class action lawsuit isn't frivolous. The problem with that is the definition of frivolous. If the case gets overthrown, even if it's on a technicality, it doesn't matter that the plaintiff actually brought a good case. It just matters that the judge ruled against them. Once that ruling has been ruled against them, now they're out all their court expenses, plus they owe the person they filed the lawsuit against. This is directly designed to inhibit people from suing companies for malpractice.
I would argue frivolously. Good cases would still go forward.
No, but you can't, dude. How many corrupt cases are going to go through, and how many cases are simply never going to happen because any legal action was chilled by the fact that they made it too prohibitively expensive or penurious to initiate in the first place?
How many times have you seen? How many times have we had examples of when they had the company dead to rights and could not win in court because they were held up in court, appeal after appeal after appeal until the other side ran out?
Can you name me a company that was unable to generate profits during a litigation? Name me one company that was not able to generate a dime in profits while it was going through some kind of court case. Because of lack of tort reform.
If I actually was Vosh, I would probably totally know what tort reform is, and I don't. I'm doing a disservice to my picture.
Karl Marx.
I'm just wanting to give a little bit of a warning, guys. We're going to be coming up on the last 10 minutes or so of the stream, mainly because I am getting extraordinarily tired because it's almost 3 a.m. where I am. So just keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. I want to put this to Red Fang because you've been in here for a little while, but you haven't kind of joined it. Not to put you on the spot. You don't have to join in, obviously. It's just I'm just giving you the opportunity to.
Well, about Wall Street, get your money on Wall Street. You're not going to make any real money on Wall Street because Wall Street will crash, and us poor people will be the ones getting the most hurt out of it. Put your money in stocks, gold, silver. Get your money on Wall Street because Wall Street's not going to help poor people.
Stocks. You are putting it in Wall Street.
Yeah, gold and silver I can agree with, but stocks would be Wall Street, literally.
Get your money out of stocks.
Buy currency. Always buy currency.
The stock market has crashed like.
You want a cause. Everybody should be going to their senator or a congressperson and saying, reinstate the push-out rule. So what the push-out rule did for financial services is allows them to commingle their profits and losses So now they can pass their losses to the depositors when the financial institution fails. So if you're a large financial institution that trades both financial instruments as well as have depositors, that
Yeah,
allows
but those people aren't there to help you. They're there to make money.
right.
If I'm
They're not going to the same stocks as you are.
does it matter the fact that I'm depositing my money in a financial institution? They're taking my deposit and earning money off of it in the form of interest. But then when they go belly up, they can cash in my premium.
That's what the push-out rule prevented. But
That is complete. Yeah, they
push-out rule, and now they can actually take the money of the depositors because it's considered an asset of the overall financial institution.
most of the time, most people's money is insured by the FDIC.
Only to a point, right?
Up to $250,000.
$250,000, yes.
So for the majority of people,
Who's got $250,000?
This isn't an issue for this isn't a majority for 90% of the population. This is not an issue. The type of people that you might be talking about, this is an issue going in a different direction.
It's an issue. It's actually an issue. It's an issue that's probably going to come to term fairly shortly. But
why?
And the reason because the worldwide losses when the system finally goes belly up will cause a ripple effect that cannot be backed up through the FDIC. So
the stock market went down 1,000%.
I would estimate
points
everybody's
today.
going to take a 30% haircut when that happens.
Are you a gold standard guy? Vince?
No, not necessarily, but I'm definitely don't like the Ponzi scheme of fiat currency. How's that?
No,
Can I jump in here really quick? So what I would say is reinstate the Glass-Steagall. No, not actually, not that. Hold on, really quick. Nationalize the banks.
Yes.
Nationalize the banks. I don't believe that financial services like postal services, like education, like transportation, like communication, like housing, like energy, all of those industries should be nationalized. They should not be commodified industries that generate a profit off of providing services that humans require to live in society. No human asks to be born. No one said, "Hey, I want to be born." Thereby, hold on. Everything that we need to survive in today's society should not be commodified and sold back to us. Every industry I listed should be nationalized or socialized.
I just don't know if we should go so far as to nationalize it.
Definitely.
We agree with
nationalize the banks.
But imagine if you end up, let's say you don't even actually have to nationalize all the banks. You could still have private banks. But let's say you nationalize the Federal Reserve. You nationalize it so it's not run by a privatized cabal of different banking organizations. You just combine it with the mint, and it's a national bank, right? In the truest sense of it.
And
it is essentially now, but it's controlled by these sort of like private economists, private banking interests.
That's what the Fed wants to do.
And that's what the Fed wants because they're trying to represent, they're trying to play off both things. But if you make it a national bank, a true national bank that can lend to the population, especially in times of trouble, it can lend at 0% interest. Mm-hmm. It can deficit spend in an infinite function, which would drive most private banks out of their fucking minds. And it would force them to be fair. And you do something that a lot of Christians, some Christians and a lot of Orthodox Jews have been looking for a long time, which is ending usury, which is supposed to be a sin, but we keep living with it day by day.
I do need to ask a question here. Because I'm assuming Karl Marx is Mr. Parker.
No, I'm Karl Marx.
You would probably know more on this than I do. But isn't the national or the combining of the Federal Reserve with the mint and turning it essentially into a national bank, isn't that an aspect of MMT, modern monetary theory?
Oh, that could actually be done at any time, actually. But
the Feds have been helping out Wall Street this entire time during the pandemic. Yeah. The Feds actually want to help out the people and actually give the people cards and give them money once a month, so it would help the economy keep going.
The Fed is not your friend.
The Feds are more my friend than the actual government that hasn't done nothing to help the people while people are getting kicked down the street.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, Vince, I would say, I would kind of agree with you because a lot of what makes the Federal Reserve that we know and love now, is the fact that it's headed by a lot of private banking concerns. I'm talking about completely getting rid of any of that interest, making it a purely public institution Combined with the mint, it's responsible for printing money and controlling economic and monetary policy. And you could do sort of the MMT stuff that we're talking about. In fact, you wouldn't even need to raise taxes on the wealthy to pay for social programs. You could just pay those social programs into existence and then watch wealthy people's wealth turn to dust.
Yeah, they're already wargaming what's going to happen when the fiat currency runs its course.
It might change. It's not going to run its course. It's probably the most sophisticated system we've got.
Actually, we're hitting a point where things could go bad very quickly.
Is your solution to do a based currency, which is basically just an abstract system of barter?
No, it's not.
But that can't grow. You need a
SDR. Special depositing rights would be used to recapitalize the banks. So the SDR is basically a basket of currencies.
That's a fiat asset, man.
Yes.
That's just an abstract fiat currency.
The plan is. I'm not telling you whether it's good or not. I'm just telling you what the plan is.
It's the same thing, though. So if you try to demonize fiat currency and say, no, we could do it this way, we'll just base it off a fiat asset instead, it doesn't make a difference. It's the same thing. You don't want to base the currency off a finite asset because all you have then is a barter system by proxy.
Yeah.
And a barter system, if you base your currency on a fixed asset, it can't grow with actual economic growth. If you base a fiat currency and it's based on the will and trust of the government, it can grow relative to the rate of exchange that's happening in an actual economy. And if the economy like ours is based on services, you can fix it to the wealth and value of those services. You're not fixing it to something crazy like gold or silver or platinum.
Well, I think a lot of people don't understand what the Federal Reserve is all about. I don't think they understand how it was enacted. I don't think they understand the concept of fractional reserve banking.
They probably don't. But the fact of the matter is, we do have a national bank. It's unfortunately under the sway of a lot of private influences. The government should just take that sucker over and create a public financing mechanism for the majority of the American people.
And what happened to the last president that tried to do that?
He was targeted by the private industries that didn't want that because they would have lost massive amounts of profits, like a lot of presidents who tried to do things that would have threatened. Yeah, because he would have threatened the profits of the financial industry is probably. I believe that the financial industry in the United States is more powerful than the United States government because they control the United States government.
Also, that particular president wasn't exactly trying to do that.
No, yeah, you're right there.
Are we trying to say JFK was shot because he was trying to change the industry?
Apparently, he was trying to initiate modern monetary theory. Yeah, he was going to create a public financing
crisis.
The man JFK actually created he actually lowered the top tax rates for people. He actually sort of spearheaded the political viability of trickle down economics. A lot of people think that that's Reagan. It wasn't. It was JFK.
Well, I mean, it was because he only brought it from like 90% down to like 72% or something like this. I mean, it was still.
That was a big.
Those were the days.
That is a big drop.
That's a huge cut.
Reagan is the one that really
but now they're
solidified supply side economics.
Yeah,
but now they're down to what 35 now.
If that. If it's capital gains stuff, you're looking at anywhere from 12.5 to 15.
The corporate tax rate is 21%. Biden wants to bring it back up to 28%. I think it should go back up to 35.
I think it should go back up to 90.
No, not the corporate tax rate. I think that all income over $1 million should be taxed at 40%. And that's over $1 million. That doesn't mean if you make like 1.5 million that all your income is taxed at that rate. That means it's marginal. I think we all know what marginal tax rates is. I don't need to explain that. Any income over 10 million should be taxed at 70%. But the corporate tax rate should be anywhere between 35 and 40%, as should the capital gains tax.
The capital gains taxes need to go up.
Yeah,
unless the government enacted a massive spending bill that did something to invest in education, infrastructure, healthcare, all that kind of stuff. Because if the government decided to deficit spend that stuff into existence, it wouldn't necessarily have to touch taxes. All these rich people could sit back on their haunches and collect all their money and all this other kind of stuff. The government would run up one hell of a deficit. It'd be a hell of a lot of fun.
Well, and the government can't do that. If they can do that if they cut the military budget down.
So
Yeah, they don't have to.
Running up a deficit is actually not bad. It,
No,
it
it's not.
can be, but it's not inherently bad because it means the government is spending money. What
so
matters,
great down, though.
hold on here, what matters is where the government is spending that money.
Right.
Okay, guys, I really hate to cut this short. I'm sure this could go on for another hour or so if we were to be left to our own devices.
Sorry, Stephen.
No. It's all good. So yeah, so look at we're on a mathpig after show. We might as well copy what he does at the end of his show. If we want to work our way around the room, just kind of say what we have going on, what we have coming up, this and that, the other thing. Just kind of keep.
I think we should let Vince go first to kind of talk about if he's got a channel, if he's got a Twitter or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not really. I appreciate the conversation. I want to foster more political discourse between both sides. I think we've gotten into very dangerous territory in the divide, and I think that there are people that are willing to meet in the middle. Most people, and it's just crazy that we're so divided at this point.
Yes. And I want to really let Vince know that I very much appreciate you coming into mathpig's channel here. You have been very respectful. You have made honest points. I might disagree with some of them, but you have made honest points. You provided sources for the things that you're saying. You have engaged in an honest and fair and appropriate manner. I'm going to find a channel to just so that you know, every Wednesday for sure. Sometimes it's Tuesday and Wednesday. This channel has open mics. We don't often talk about politics, but that's mainly because we don't have a lot of people to talk about these politics. But I'm gonna link you the channel. So Tuesdays and Wednesdays, if you want to subscribe to this channel, just watch out. It's 7 p.m. Eastern usually that they start. I put the link there in a private chat. Feel free to come in. We talk about religion. Sometimes we talk about politics, but you seem like a very honest interlocutor, and I would absolutely love to have you come into the channel. This channel sometimes. It's not mine, it's a buddy's, but yeah, I would love to see you more in some of these streams.
I appreciate that.
Obviously, if we are going to be promoting any channel, that is only coming after my own.
God, capitalists, if freaking greedy advertisement.
We want to. Joking, of course. Jeff, have you got anything coming up?
Probably a series of videos. I've encouraged my twin brother Jay he is getting into some theological stuff, some Bible history stuff. He's trying to kind of catch up with me on a couple of topics after getting kind of curious about it. So I sent him some homework. He's doing the readings. I'm sure he's going to end up having questions and issues. So we're probably going to end up starting a series possibly next week where we start kind of getting into probably the history of the New Testament, like Paul and stuff like that. And it's gonna kind of bump off stuff that I've done before, like debates I've had about authorship of the Gospels, the authorship of the Pauline epistles, the timeline of the whole thing, that kind of stuff.
Oh, Pauline epistles. You got to personally let me know about that because I'd be very much interested.
Yeah, hopefully once he gets a little bit more read, if he doesn't get bored with it, that the goal is to start kind of like a kind of casual video series where we're going to talk about some of that stuff. So
right on.
Bring people in if they've got questions.
Awesome.
Okay,
That'll be fun to watch.
Parker, have you got anything coming up or going on?
I haven't really done any videos. I might do an open hangout Saturday or Sunday. I don't really know. I plan to make some I've made an intro. I need to make some content. I plan to focus on politics and stuff. That's what That's why I kind of joined mathpig's stream.
You know what you ought to do, Parker, is get a hold of Vincere, see if he's got an email or a Twitter or something, and have him on your channel.
Oh, yeah, that would be interesting.
I think that would be a very stimulating discussion because Vincere seems like a very respectful, honest interlocutor, as I said earlier.
Also, sorry, but I'll probably end up doing, because the election's coming up pretty soon, I will probably end up going live to do my own kind of political rant stuff, just before the election.
Yes, we'll be splitting the audience, so we will, because I'm going live on Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern. I'm doing my own kind of debate breakdown and kind of general conversation about, the election and stuff like that. So we'll be fighting over viewers. So we will.
If I promise to be good, will you let me just join yours?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out for that then.
might hop in.
I
I'm
will.
gonna be like going between watching Vosh because he said he's gonna be pretty much streaming all fucking day, like for like 15 hours. So I'm gonna be hopping into. I'm not gonna be in if I can get a hold of him.
That'd be hilarious.
Stream. The thing is, if I met Vosh, he's autistic like me. He's like maybe like 6 months somewhere in there older than me. I already know me and him would get along phenomenally.
Yeah.
Hey, Leo.
I should check that out because he does. That guy can go on. He knows quite a bit about.
I feel like Vince probably knows who Vosh is.
Yeah, I do.
Leo, have you watched my intro? I sent you it on Twitter.
Did you?
Yes,
I'll
you
have to
read
check
it.
that out. Did I?
Yes,
Maybe I.
you read it like a week ago.
So, Red Fang, do you have anything coming up, going on? Anything else like that?
No,
Watch it later.
I usually am on Jeff's stream, his brother's stream, and I harass the Christians on Praise's stream.
He does a good job at that.
Nice.
He
nice.
does. He
We
does.
will always respect people who are up to that sort of crack. So, look, guys, this was an absolute fucking blast. Thank you so much to everybody who was.
I don't
watching
get to show my
commenting
channel.
on.
Shut up.
Thank you to everybody who was engaging in the comments. This and that, the other thing. Like,
It's not going to
all
happen for you. It's not going to happen.
I see how it is, Steven. I don't get to show my channel, huh?
No, because it's mine. We posted a link to yours in the comments. Shut the fuck. What do you? What else
Selfish
do you want
brat.
from me? What else do you want?
Kick him out.
I could do a math Hitler.
Math Hitler. Yeah.
Bam.
Okay, so as I said, Saturday 6 p.m. Eastern. Make sure that you come back to the channel for then, because I'll be going over and I'm going to try and get like people from different walks of life, different opinions, etc., all in to talk about the debates. Should be a spicy one, especially if we get some different
Comrade here.
Well, yeah. If we get comrades from all different
I think
all
Steve-
different points on the politics scale. So
I will show up leftist, naked, and drunk. So
are,
Best kind.
are you a comrade, Steven?
well, I don't know if I'm quite communist yet, but I'm
No.
I'm
Not communist. Are you socialist?
yeah.
Okay.
I
Awesome.
heard a turtle
I'm
yeah,
the true socialist
Which is
here.
something that I had only kind of like recently come to. Like I had always kind of described myself as like a democratic socialist up until like really only like a month or two ago, and then I was just kind of like, I think that Vosh kind of like tipped me there, where he was just kind of like,
he
you
did
know
to
what?
me like a year ago, and
Maybe I was just like,
like-
maybe we probably should have like worker co-ops. They seem like they're a pretty good idea. So
Yeah.
anyway,
and
at
they're-
the risk of starting another conversation, guys, I'm trying to end this fucking stream.
you
No,
just
you're not.
started. You just started 3.
I'm sorry.
We're gonna have an after show.
No more after show.
Until Saturday, guys, we will see you then. Thank you so much to everybody who came. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Guys.
Adios.